Let's talk some golf.
Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, happy Wednesday. U.S. Open week. Another golf major is upon us, the third of the season, and holy smokes. I guess I'm surprised there isn't more discussion in the space. I felt like this was going to suck the air out of the room this week because the NBA Finals break between games is so long and nobody really wants to talk about baseball. And, we have a couple more weeks till Wimbledon, so there's nothing to go, nothing really to dig your teeth into tennis here. But it's been a little bit muted kind of conversations around the U.S. Open. Most of everything I've seen is kind of focusing on the event itself, which I guess is good. That's what they want. This is the premier event of the year for the USGA. So that's fine. But there is an undercurrent about what is going on in the game of golf that I think is an important part of the conversation that we started digging into a little bit last week as we kind of got more understanding of what the Live Golf event, Live Golf Tour was going to look like. We got to actually see an event. And we decided let's bring in kind of a guy who's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on, not just in the world of golf, but in kind of Europe and worldwide. And that is Julian, the Golf Snob Frog, first ever guest appearance on the Deep Dive proper. We did a Spaces with you talking.
I was going to say we've talked to him. I couldn't remember when it was. He jumped into our Spaces.
Winter Olympics biathlon. We had some winners.
Oh, fucking!
We had some luge winners. We had a lot of sliding winners thanks to Bronner. That was a lot of fun. Winter Olympics were fun in general. We only have to wait 2 more years to get to Paris 2024, which should be a ton of fun. Hopefully by then I'm covering it for NBC Live, covering the betting live from Paris. That'd be pretty cool. I'll try to
please.
I'll speak that into existence. But without further ado, first ever guest appearance in the Deep Dive. Welcome, Golf Snob Frog.
Thank you very much, guys. Very happy to be here. Sorry about the no video, but I'm traveling and I'm in a bad Wi-Fi spot, so too bad. But thanks for having me. Very, very, very glad to be here tonight.
Yeah, Dan quickly whipped up a very nice photo for you if you're watching this in the YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast form, even if you just go look at it.
Very apropos.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's very worth popping over.
We'll get some wine wrecks too.
Yeah, not only the fact that you follow Golf Bet Golf, but you are in Europe and there has been, the Live tournament was in London, and now there's a bunch of scuttlebutt around what the DP tour is going to do. And it's funny how us Americans are so insulated from everything else. That, I think even people that maybe watch golf, bet golf, might struggle to tell you what the DP tour is because it kind of did change names. And I mentioned this too in the chat with Julian. I said, us Americans, again, we're so used to one regulatory body for our sport. Football is the NFL, college football is the NCAA, and it's, obviously tennis. We're not even going to get into that. There's like 6 places taking care of that. But I think a lot of people have learned that lately with all the majors are run by different entities that are not the PGA. And then, we have the DP that is running the World Tour. And of course, there's a shitload of other ones. The Corn Ferry is tied in with the PGA, but Sunshine, the Japanese Tour, the Australian Tour, there's all kinds of things going on. And a lot of people don't realize there's not just some one big world golf syndicate running all these things. Even you talk about a guy I want to say, did Rory play over in Dubai early in the season?
Yes.
So a guy like Rory, who, is the shining example of the PGA's knight in shining armor, he's played events for 6 different entities in the last 12 months then.
Wow.
It's a whole thing. And it's very interesting. He's just a mercenary.
It's a very good point because it goes to the basis of why there is a Live Golf Tour. Actually, it's because of how the PGA was created and how it's not a sport organization like the NFL and the NBA, and we can go more in details about that. But it's their huge weakness now is that They are not, a sport owned by an actual business that runs it. So that's at the root, the core of the issues that they have now. And we talked a bit about the PGA has to change, to adapt and to counter the live golf, but they can't. They actually can't. They are just a player organization, and so we can talk more in details about that, but that's at the root of all of this, is that they are very vulnerable right now. And you can think what you want about the Live Golf Tour, but it's a threat. It's a threat. It's definitely a threat in the long run.
Very
And
interesting.
I get just really, really recently, like as recently as today, we knew the pot was going to go up. But I mean, in your opinion, the purse, I'm sure you've seen it, what the
Yeah,
purse and the winner's
of
share is
course.
for the US Open. If we didn't have an event in London last week, do you think the winner was taking 3.15 in the US Open? Like they were going to move it up a little, but I feel like that might have been, I think they might have last second changed how much they moved it up, because it is a very
Yes.
rich purse, the richest probably of all
Yes,
time for
well,
a major.
that's maybe the only thing that we've seen from the PGA in terms of what have they done to counter this other tours. They've tried to just give more money to their biggest players, and that's what we saw last year with the PIP. The famous PIP money was just a way for them to give more money to their top players. But when you go to the basis of it, the PGA Tour is there to help their members. And in their statutes, Peter Malnati has exactly the same rights as Rory McIlroy, and that is the issue. It's at the fundament of all problem is that they are popular because of their big stars, but they have a duty to represent all of the players, and they are not a business itself. They pretend they're a charity just for fiscal reasons, and all of this, their construction, their infrastructure is extremely weak, and that's the reason the Saudis targeted them. They've dipped their fingers in Formula One, which is actually a sport owned just by one guy, was created by one guy, Bernie Ecclestone, and it's owned by one business and controlled very much. So they couldn't do much there. Then they tried football or soccer, if you want, and buy some teams, but they can't own the leagues. And then they came across golf and they was like, wait a second here. Golf, those guys, they're just free agents. We could do whatever the hell we want. You offer them money, they go there. So they were like a prime target for those guys, and that's basically what happened.
That makes a ton of sense. And
okay.
It even actually brings up maybe a point of comparison that I wanted to make about the broadcast itself. It felt like they were trying to make it look and feel like an F1 broadcast, right? The way that the names were abbreviated,
exactly
the sidebar,
like,
the colors,
that's true.
Just in the general spirit of the broadcast was trying to make it feel like an F1.
Yeah, and that's the other major weakness about PGA is everybody complains about the product. It's a bad product when you know how much they have in terms of potential of players, of star power attraction of those guys, and the events that they show, and they are at the mercy of those old broadcasting houses like CBS, that are just entrenched in their ways of working, and it's all very old fashioned. And when you go back all the way to the roots of the PGA Tour, it was basically exhibition events, with stars and all that stuff. It wasn't really a sport until 2 decades ago, and so it's very interesting that there are two issues there. One, the infrastructure, the organization. The other one is the quality of the product and the broadcast. And so that's where Live believe they can do something better. Honestly, they haven't reached that at all right now because the product is still quite poor. But they are trying to do different things, the different formats. That leaderboard was actually pretty cool, except those stupid short names that nobody knew which player was what initials, the acronyms, terrible choice. But in a way, they're trying to be innovative, and they're just scratching at the surface right now.
Sure.
And to be honest, as a first event ever, it wasn't a catastrophe and it wasn't like a complete shit show. They actually put up an event that had a winner. Okay, the course was bad. They were unlucky that there was zero suspense on the last day.
Yeah.
But I don't think they could control that in any way. The Schwartzel just run away with it, and there was zero suspense at the end who was going to win it. But they can't do anything about that. What did you guys think of the broadcast?
Here, let me go first, and then I want Andy's opinion.
Yeah,
I thought it was a joke. It felt like an absolute farce.
Yeah,
the
total exhibition
event. The team logos hysterically bad. The level competitiveness not there at all. The 54-hole format was bad. I thought the fact that there was no golf on Sunday, like I'm not sure why that was an innovation that they needed to test. I don't know why 3 days of golf was an innovation that people felt like was necessary. And I thought just in general, it could not have been a worse juxtaposition to what happened with the Canadian Open, where you had
that was random though,
explosive scoring and a really, really loaded leaderboard on Sunday. And I think it was
PGA got lucky on that one.
PGA, I think the players responded in a way, like they felt like they had to put on a show to a degree. And the guys stepped up and treated that Canadian Open like it was bigger than it was, but good for them for doing it. And honestly, by the time I was watching Sunday golf and watching the final round of the Canadian Open, I'd kind of forgotten all about the live event, frankly. It had been over for a day. It was tough to find scores, which is weird. Even just getting a general idea of what was happening was not easy. It was tough to understand exactly where players were because of the shotgun format, even though the shotgun format did allow for a lot more concentrated watching of golf, if that's what you tune in for, I guess. But I didn't really look. Yeah.
Being advocate of the devil, there were more golf shots shown. Because they don't have advertising. That's a huge plus, of course.
Sure.
And the format, I think the 54 holes, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the way that it stopped on Saturday, I think it was to they promised the players they would have time to get to the US Open. I'm pretty sure this is something just temporary, and then they're going to
other events will end on Sunday.
Yes, so
Dan confirmed that for us.
Okay, and then the shotgun, I mean, it's a great idea on paper, but on the last day it could get very weird if somebody just wins on a hole and then everybody continues to play. I mean, that's going to create some issues. But I saw the commentary was terrible. I mean, it was just pure propaganda. That was just very bad.
Yeah.
But I was actually impressed in terms of the number of cameras they had, the number of goal shots we saw. There wasn't really much difference in quality in terms of pure camera and broadcast production. And that's what impressed me. I thought it would be just like a streaming event, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
And on the leaderboard stuff, I think they just wanted they did this purposely because they wanted to get as many YouTube viewers as they could. So you could only see the leaderboard on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
What do you think, Andy?
That's something I haven't heard yet. That's interesting. Yeah, it was. The broadcasters were kind of rough, but honestly, the PGA broadcasters, the way they were carrying water, both tours were kind of hard to watch this week because it's like they had their pre-production meetings and they were told to say certain things. Like, man, just cover golf, both you guys. That would be great. Yeah. The shotgun start could get really weird on a Sunday. You mentioned how it was a runaway by Schwartzel that kind of saved it, but the scoreboard on the side I love. They need to fix it so I know who's who, and they should also, it'd be better if it said which hole they were on. Kind of help me out with that.
The team format is a complete fucking joke, especially that the two best teams didn't draft any players. That's just scandalous.
It didn't make any sense. Like, they could probably scrap the team thing or do like a points thing at the end. It doesn't matter. They kept showing the team scores for the tournament. No one cares about that. Maybe after the tournament, some sort of a FedEx team points. Towards the end of the year, you could say like which team was the most dominant. That might be something, but during the tournament, people aren't going to care. I liked constant golf, and like you mentioned off the air, they have so much money set aside. Not so sure they have to take on sponsors and put commercials in. They should. I mean, the fact that they can just not show commercials ever would be wild for these events. And it's funny. I ended up watching more Live than PGA because I just didn't watch golf on Saturday or Sunday. I was out of town, and I went to the baseball games in the track. So like I didn't get to take in a lot of golf. At the end of the day, I caught some of the end on Sunday, and I realized like, man, I probably watched more LIV on the damn YouTube than I watched the Canadian Open.
Here's the thing.
Canadian Open too. I will say, Drew, you mentioned the players stepping up at the end. I do think that was part PGA.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They set the course up in a way that Justin Rose could have shot a 57 if he didn't screw it up. Like the pin positions and the watering and everything were set up for. Let's go out there and have some fireworks on Sunday when all eyes are back on us.
Yeah,
that was smart. That was fine. It was the best thing they've done for a while.
Yeah. So and here's the other thing: if the major innovations are they showed more golf shots, that's an easy fix. Like the PGA has long had an opportunity to put pressure on the broadcasters to do a better job of packaging their product, and they've never
done it though.
Now their hands. Well, no, it's an easy fix because they've never exercised that. They've never.
No, but they're stuck. They're stuck with sponsors. I think they've basically sold so much naming rights, sponsor right, with all kinds of like the FedEx Cup points and all that stuff, the Aon risk reward. They're stuck in those contracts, and I'm pretty sure that they've had those discussions with the broadcasters. We want to show more golf, but then the broadcast companies go back and say, wait a second, we just paid fucking $5 billion for the rights for 10 years. Now you can't come and tell us to show more golf because we got to sell the advertising space to justify the money we gave you for that 10-year contract. So they're stuck in that, and that could be a danger. You know what I mean? Those broadcasters have to make their money back, especially now that some of the stars of the PGAs are leaving for another tour.
Let's zero in on that because the guys that have left, in my opinion, is kind of a who's who of have either aged or skilled out of really contending.
But Drew, those guys are very popular. Mickelson, he's huge. He's number 2 to Tiger. He brings audience. He like a general people that don't follow golf. They know lefty. And so that's an issue. DJ is also well known. Even P. Reed, everybody hates him. Guess what? He's got great audience figures, So this could be an issue, is that even though those guys are not great golfers, they are audience attraction.
Yeah, but you know what? Did you see the videos of Phil in Boston? Though? You know who else you can say that about, though? David Beckham, who went to LA Galaxy. You can say that about Messi, who's about to go to Miami. Right? Does any of that move the needle for MLS? No.
See, but that's a really that's a poor comparison.
No, because
the US doesn't care about soccer.
No, I know, but at the same time, like it's a venture where they're trying to create a product that is eyeballs, and they're getting these over the hill talent. And honestly, like I guess my point is the best golfers in the world are all still in the PGA Tour, and they have elected to do so. And guys like Rahm out there making statements like, the money is not a factor. Like I could retire tomorrow. And, I'm in this because I want to take home titles at the world's best golf courses in a format that's existed for hundreds of years. Like that was a great statement and a great sentiment. And I think
yes, but it doesn't work long term. I think that there is an issue. I mean, Andy touched on it last week, and that was very, very good of him, is that the biggest threat for the PGA Tour are the young amateurs. If Live Golf is able to attract those guys, PGA will have a huge issue because the stars of tomorrow could be on the Live Tour instead of the PGA. The John Rahms, the Victor Hovlands, and the Morikawas of tomorrow could be there, and that's a big issue. And my main worry, I completely agree that Live Golf right now is a pile of crap, but my worry is that my worry is that PGA Tour is unable to change themselves to counter that.
So in terms of likely paths, you think either one, Live Golf remains a pile of crap and the PGA is never really threatened, or Live Golf gets their shit together and then the PGA is in deep trouble.
Live Golf could improve rapidly. And look, already last year they had the PIP. 4 guys in the top 10 will be on the Live Golf Tour in only their second event. Think about that. The PIP is around who are the most influential golfers right now in the world. And 4 of those guys will play in Portland on the Live Golf Tour. That is a huge threat for the PGA Tour. You know what I mean?
And in the terms of like a startup, the runway, the burn, where you have this much time, it would be, again, we've made the comparison to like USFL, XFL. Like, let's say this, what are we playing right now? What is the current league that we have going that sucks?
USFL.
If the USFL had been able to get Kayvon Thibodeau to come play and, Walker, and let's just say the whole first round of players, and let's say they did that 3 years in a row.
Yes.
I don't think those players like attract enough attention at their age and where they're at their skill sets to like make it, oh my God, this is on par with the NFL. And eventually you'd have to compete with the NFL contracts. The USFL couldn't, and they would, if they tried to do something like that, they would go bankrupt. They wouldn't have the money.
Yes.
Whereas like when you have someone who can sustain this for a very long time, they can, these amateurs they're getting now, they can be mature stars or flame out. Some of them won't be any good, but they can get all of them, or a good chunk of them. They in 10 years when they have all the good young players, and that's it's become a good product because of that. That's what's that's the biggest difference, is they have so much cash to just sit on this runway.
But the
forever.
length of that runway is 5 years. It's going to take 5 years before people are sitting there and asking themselves, wait, are the
I thought you meant the end of the runway. No,
I'm saying like it's going to take 5 years before people are sitting there asking themselves, wait, are the best golfers in the world playing here or here? I can't.
5 might be short.
It's going to take a long time. Yeah, it's going to take a long time. And honestly,
that's a long play.
That 5 year gap, like where the Live Golf Tour is running way fewer events per year. They're not anywhere close to as prestigious as even like the second or third tier, PGA Tour events, just on name and, sponsors and golf courses. Like I just feel like you can only exist as, without any prestige, without any recognition as like a viable, without looking like a clown show, without being a sideshow or clown,
now it looks like a clown show to you, but they could really improve. I mean, I'm not saying that they will, because I still have doubts. I mean, they basically, if you look at what they did, the PGL, those English guys, from the sports management company, They came up with the idea. They went to the Saudis for part of the financing, and the Saudis went full in on the idea. They're like, okay, we're behind you. And then when the backlash happened against the PGL because of the Saudi backing, Saudi just stole their idea and ran away with it. That's why I have some doubts in their ability to improve the product, but I think that they could seriously improve the product, and you could see even more golfers leaving, like Justin Rose, all those names, Bubba Watson. I mean, you have to give it the whole year. At the end of the 8 events of the Live of this year, you could sort of make a judgment, okay, where's this going? But they could really create something that's actually watchable, and that could have an impact on the PGA long term, because in the end, people forget, and that's the whole thing about sports washing, is that there will be less emphasis on Saudi money. This will all sort of go away. Just like the Beijing Olympics, people didn't focus on. First, it was like, oh, let's boycott it, and in the end, everybody watched it, and so that's what they're banking on. And I think
the NBA.
On that subject, I don't think that Live Golf is because this is something you talked about on the pod last week. It doesn't really have. It's not meant for Saudis themselves inside the kingdom. It's really for look, the king of Saudi Arabia, he's a dictator, he's a tyrant, but he doesn't see himself as being that. And that's something very important to understand about dictators. He really thinks that he is a powerful leader and leading his country. He wants his country to be one of the leading countries in the world. And so this initiative is sort of to flatter his ego and show him your country can actually be like a normal country, can compete with the US, put up big sports events. And that's why there is like an unlimited amount of money available to those guys, because it's based, in the end, the real true reason is just to flatter the king.
Yeah.
To show him. Right? Sorry, Andy.
No, and I did want to ask before we get over to the U.S. Open. I wanted to ask a little more about the DP, but it did make me think too. Is you had a very salient point there. Is we should probably wait not only the 8 events to see where LIV is in 8 events, but see if the PGA has budged an inch on anything. You know, there's so many domino. We got to find out like what does a LIV broadcast and a LIV field look like at the end of these 8 events. What has the PGA done to change? Has the Masters Committee, the RNA, has anyone else made any moves against him? We'll get to
that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing. If they can get the OWGR points, and if the majors, they're not excluded from the majors, that's basically, it's going to help the LIV Tour survive. If all the majors excluded those guys, then it would die. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And if you look at the politics of golf, the majors, they've never really liked the PGA Tour. And so, look, the PGA Tour was itself was created as a rebel organization to the US PGA.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that, but so the US PGA, who organizes the PGA Championship, they're not friends with the PGA Tour. Then the USGA, who organizes the US Open this week, they represent the amateur. They represent the game of golf in general and without any affiliation to any professional organization. And then the Masters, that's even more interesting because they could actually if they look at it politically, strategically, they could be the ones that replace the PGA Tour if the PGA Tour kind of explodes. Because in a way, the only way the PGA Tour is going to survive to compete with those guys is if they completely change their reason for being, which is not represent the players, but just be like an organization like NFL or NBA who actually, owns the game and then pays those guys to play it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have to change.
And it's funny too that the change thing get me thinking of somebody that tweeted like, we talk about where will the LIV be in 8 events? Where will the majors move? And then the third part of that equation is, will the PGA change? The PGA changes so slowly.
Okay.
Like
let me put an explanation.
I got to mention the tweet.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Like as it took them until 1990 to say, all right, we won't play on segregated courses anymore.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
Like they really drag their feet when it comes to society.
So I think between the 3 of us, and you guys feel obviously strongly enough about this that you move the needle for me, the likelihood of the PGA changing and adapting is low. And so almost certainly that means that this hurts the PGA. And so I think the PGA not changing and getting hurt is a high likely scenario. Okay.
And
but I think
maybe that's a catalyst for change.
Maybe. Yeah. And honestly, like if somebody comes along and builds it better and then the PGA dies, I don't think anyone's really crying over that, but that's fine. So let me ask you then, as a better food snob frog, make a market for me between these 3 potential outcomes. The LIV in 5 years, LIV Golf never gets their act together. It's still a circus, and both tours are PGA is worse for it, and LIV is still a joke. Okay, what price probability of that versus in 5 years, LIV has really gotten it together and is putting on equal to or better events, and people are asking themselves which tour are the world's best golfers actually playing on. And then the third is, after 5 years, Saudi Arabia loses interest and decides, oh, you know what? The Premier League went belly up and we bought that ultimately, and that's more interesting to us now, and we give up on golf, right? Like some external event happens where they're all of a sudden all in on F1 or for soccer, and they lose interest in golf, right? Like what are the how do you break down those three, and is there a fourth one I'm forgetting about as far as possible outcomes?
First, as an advantage player and better, I would tell you this is way too early to put up any kind of bet on this.
I like
but
that
the second one, I think the third option is the least likely. The fact that they lose interest or just stop after 5 years. And maybe the first option would be the favorite for me, that they actually managed to get maybe 50% of the stars of the PGA Tour actually go to better courses, tweak the format when it's better. And I mean, 54 holes, that's because people want a 4-day tournament is kind of too long. People want stuff, more modern, quicker. And so they could tweak the format where it actually gets interesting. And they could start getting to really interesting courses that can't be played by the PGA or by majors because they are either too small and all of that stuff. So like the legendary courses in the world, where they could actually draw some massive attention. So I would say that's the favorite, and the lead, and the second in the middle that the PGA would change enough to make live irrelevant. I think that I'm not sure about that one. It's still a bit more chance than the live stopping, but the favorite is basically that live will still be there in 5 years and will be relevant, because there are not that many tournaments. Well, like what John Ram said, a lot of the legacy stuff is the majors, of course, Riviera, the Memorial.
There's like
other tournaments. There's like 4 or 5 max.
Torrey Pines, Pebble Beach.
More Torrey Pines, it's not a great course, Torrey Pines is
I
not
know,
really
loved. But sitting down and watching golf in San Diego and the beautiful Pacific sunset on a in January is pretty nice.
Exactly.
But no, let's I think realistically, the fact is this is all probably going to end poorly. Sad. This is going to be a sad kind of dissolution of the PGA Tour in some way, shape, or form, that we are like, wow, that's a bummer that happened.
Yeah.
But for
me,
it seems
to
like
maybe close the subject, for me, what's really important is that PGA Tour created this problem themselves.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the Saudis looked at every major sports and they came on golf. Why? Because of the weak organization,
the bad
structure, and the quality of
I feel like tennis is next if this works.
I agree. Yeah.
They were the sick antelope at the back of the herd.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, let's talk about the premier event this week a little bit then in this U.S. Open. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about your process. I guess for our listeners who aren't aware, I know you are a very, very avid golf bettor in general. Would you say that's your number one sport in terms of asset allocation when it comes to sports betting?
Yeah, it has changed, I must say, the last 1 or 2 years. But historically, it's been my number one sport for sure. I've been betting it for almost 25 years.
Oh, yes. Awesome.
I'm sure you're a boomer.
Excellent. I've been betting for almost 25 years, so it's not that crazy.
There you go.
Not golf, though. I've only been betting golf for
there were some dark ages. With the Tiger years are known as the dark ages of golf betting. I can tell you that.
So, is your strategy generally to focus on the outright markets and the derivatives of those outright markets, or do you zero in on head-to-heads and matchups and things like that?
No, I'm like your typical Euro better. I'm really much focused on outrights. A lot has shifted toward the exchange and live trading the last 5 years, but also derivatives of outrights, of course, and head-to-heads. I've dabbled in that, but it's a very American type of betting, and I defer to my American colleagues when it comes to that. I'm much, like I said, I'm much more an advantage player. I've been using retail books in Europe and sort of exploiting their inefficiencies. That's really my angle.
Okay, so live. Let's talk about a little bit about like an outright and a live trade. As you come across, do you put together a portfolio on the outset that has, you're just trying to capture best price?
Yes.
You're trying to beat the price between the Open and the golf tournament starting before it
Absolutely.
starts, and then how like what is like the general kind of allocation between a Monday and a Sunday?
Monday prices are a feast. I mean, it's great to really go up against the odds makers right at the open of markets. That's basically been my bread and butter. I never. People always ask me, okay, so who's going to win this week? I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that this guy shouldn't be 50-1. He's going to end the week at 33-1. So I'm betting him at 50. I have no idea if he's going to win. I bet numbers. I don't bet golfers, and
Sure.
That's really the process that I have. But the exchange is so much dependent on liquidity, and the last few years, Betfair liquidities on golf have been terrible. So I had to change a little bit my taxi. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's
What do
very
you make?
light.
What is
No, and
that because the market makers are just like, we can't beat this, we're moving on, or what? You're hurting them too bad. They give up on Betfair.
No. I think
Someone has to match.
that the market is dominated by big players, which have 1,000 times the physics capacity that I have, and they dominate the market. There's not enough like recreational bettors that are betting on the exchange that I could exploit those guys instead of exploiting the Bloom and those guys. I can't do that. So
when there's two advantage players trying to match on an exchange,
exactly,
they both go home without a bet. Like that's how that goes. Neither of them finds that happy medium, and it's funny too. Like we just don't think about betting that way. Where it's like, remember when I was helping who's our Scottish guy? God, I feel bad. I can't think of his name. Sully out with some golf content.
Sure.
Yes. I had our
He's
guy.
Irish.
Irish. Oh man, don't tell my
I'm gonna tell him. I'm WhatsApping
you. It's all the same. They're all the same country up there, guys. They all just need to get together. Either way, I had Louis in the tournament. He lost to John Rahm in the fourth round there, and I got an early number
US
on
Open.
Louis. Yeah, I got Louis at an early number 90, I think. And we got back on the show the next week, and I was sad. I was not happy that I didn't win that bet because it accrued quite a bit of value throughout the tournament. And I mean, right away, he didn't even ask me. He's just like, "Oh man, yeah, you probably made some money there. I bet you could have traded out there on Sunday for quite a bit." I'm like, "We don't have that. I can't. I can't just go take the Louis on the exchange or lay. I feel weird saying lay Louis, but the way that somebody could on the exchange, and the more I thought about it, I'm like,
and also you have
even for like half the stake. I wish I could have.
Or the each way places. You would have, you take in 90-1 with places, then you would at least get some of your money back with the each way.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we are starting to have some of that at some of the book. 365 is now in New Jersey and maybe one other place, so we do have some of that. Canadian bettors have each way, so that's something I probably should start wasting money on.
So let's say you feast on prices on Monday. You you see the groupings as we get closer to the tournament. There's wave bias. There's just in general time bias because some guys tee off earlier, right? Do you make any adjustments between feasting on prices and the tournament starting?
That's funny because it's always been one of my big, how could I say, favorite thing to say is that the weather bias and draw biases have historically always been overvalued by bettors and the public. I think that's really statistically, I've looked at it, and the only time there's a really real draw bias because of weather is during the Scottish Open or the Irish Open, and of course maybe the British Open, but it's limited to just a few weeks a year, and that often wind is so unpredictable that it's most of the time just being overestimated or overvalued by bettors, and I'm often on the other side of it actually, when people think, oh, there's a draw bias that way, and that's been also exacerbated by DFS, where you're very scared that your lineup is affected.
Sure.
It actually gives me angle to counter that, and I've made some money by betting against the draw bias.
Well, what about the fact though that if you're betting, if you've already gotten the guys at 50-1 who close 33-1, but they're afternoon tee times.
Yes.
Weather and draw bias aside, by the time they tee off, they've drifted.
On the exchange,
it doesn't happen.
Doesn't really happen. I mean, not all the time, but certainly for me, I will look at trading out of a bet. So if I bet somebody 50-1 and they tee off at 33-1, I will cover some of my position to make sure I get some of it out of it.
Yeah.
And so it's very trading
PGA Championship had to be huge because Rory shot in the morning a 6 under in the morning. And so basically half the field and a bunch of the contenders had not even teed off.
And actually,
their win probabilities were already nuked.
The afternoon wave was the one who had like a 2-stroke advantage there.
Yeah.
It was a backwards wind one. Right. And that's the thing. Like, I'm sitting here and telling you there was a 2-stroke difference at the PGA for those two waves. But that's the thing. Like, I'm telling you this in June. Like, to Food Snob's point, it is very unpredictable, and a lot of people we remember that. I remember that one because it was big, but that's one event where you hear this.
And the only thing you have to remember is that JT won, and he was on the wrong side of the draw. Yep. So that's just a proof that it's being overvalued.
And the thing is, too, it's, I give one example, but you hear it every week. And it's not every week we see big differences, and even the one where was at Sawgrass, where we had the really weird wind over the weekend. Crazy. Like that's fine and all. We can talk about it. Like when we look back at results and we say, I hate to use his players' results because he was in the bad wave, but before the tournament is when you have to bet. And there was no way to predict, like, okay, the guys that are going out from these tee times are going to get just bent over a barrel and thrown into a hurricane. Like, again, it's so impossible to predict that thing when there is a narrative out in the DFS streets. I like that, a bit of a contrarian angle.
Interesting. Okay. So then as the tournament goes on, and if it's a competitive field, better events from a live trading perspective if there are like big names at the leaderboard and it's relatively close, or do you find better value in the derivative markets when it's a runaway and there's less interest overall?
That's a good question, but honestly, Betfair Exchange is so influenced by liquidity, and it's quite random how much liquidity is actually available week to week. I mean, during majors, there is much more liquidity and it's much easier to really trade. In any other events like the DP World Tour right now is an absolute shambles, and you can't really trade on DP World Tours also because it has this narrative that all the guys leading on Sunday morning never win. Nobody is able to close out the tournament. It's just a shit show every Sunday. But it's just a small part of what I do trading Betfair. There are guys that do this full time. I don't have the luxury of being able to do this full time, like the tennis traders or the cricket traders. I'm not as advanced as those guys, but for me, it's more about getting value, and then getting one great way to do it on Betfair Exchange. You can actually get all your stakes back, and you still have some bets that are live at nice odds with some of the runners. And it's basically a zero risk tournament in the end for you, where you're 100% sure you're not going to lose money, and you might have a nice payday at the end of it. That's usually my goal week to week.
Fantastic. Okay. So what's your goal this week? And what is your read on the U.S. Open in what looks to be the most difficult and competitive field? I have not made a bet yet on this tournament. I do not know what to bet on this tournament. There are way too many things going on, and I just have not had time to really get involved. I'm guessing it's too late.
It's too late, mate.
It's too late. Okay, so
all the good prices are gone.
What are the prices in pocket for you? Because I you send me stuff all the time that you're like, I got this on this, and I'm like, how in the hell did you do that? What were some of the like how
very small stakes?
Yeah, what are some of the how in the hell prices that you have in pocket as we get ready for this tournament?
No, I think this tournament is very interesting because we talked about it's a new course that nobody really knows. Last event there was 1989 or something. I mean, the course has completely changed. And if you look at the last two US Opens, or like at the Pebble Beach or at Torrey Pines, those are courses that we know from the normal rotation. So those majors at courses that are kind of unknown are always very interesting. And for me, I think I have more edges on those than the normal regular courses. Why? Because I'm a golf architecture fan and I love to look at the history of those courses, also having played on some of those. And so this week is really interesting because of historically, it's a very important US Open course. On 1913, Francis Ouimet, who people say he's American, actually is a French name. So but anyway, it's a nice historic course, and it's been completely revamped by probably one of the best architects right now, which is Gil Hanse. And knowing and also the USGA had this era of Mike Davis setting up the courses like super penal. If you remember, they didn't want people to break par. But the last few years, it's a different guy. It's Ben Hammer, I think his name is, or Bonehammer. And he sets up the courses much nicer. They don't want to have the backlash of players complaining about the setup. And so they have gradual rough. But this course has such small greens, very slopey greens. And I would say the two main things that came out of this is driving accuracy, because there is really high fescue. So when you look at what Bryson did last time, he was able to get out of this thick rough, but that was never knee high or even hip high. But this week you can have that. And the second part is scrambling. You're gonna need some magic around the greens to get out of trouble, and everybody's gonna get in trouble because of firm and fast conditions on very small greens that you have to access from long distances.
I saw some maps, some overhead maps of the greens. Some of them looked like topography maps of like counties in Chile. They were, I mean, there are saddles and there are ridges and there are, tiers.
There are blind shots. It's a very frustrating course. And that's why some of the stuff, like one guy like Billy Horschel, he's had an amazing season. And when he's on form, he seems unbeatable, but he's part of those players where you think, and even John Ram can be like this sometimes, where they can kind of lose their patience.
Yeah.
It's not a good course, I would say, for Billy Ho. And whereas cool-blooded guys like Morikawa or Sung Jae Im, who don't show any emotion and just go about, it's really a grinder's course, and it's not. There's no premium on birdie. It's premium on making pars instead of bogeys.
Okay, so what's one bet you made for an outright that you are not just like, I can't believe I got this price, but you're like, I think this has a realistic shot to come home?
Very hard. The top of the market's very hard to decrypt for me. I'm more of a long shot type of guy that's hoping that some of it. I did get Sung Jae Im at 66 to 1.
Plus 3,600 now. Okay.
He's okay. But that's one bet I liked. I got Max Homa at Pinnacle at 120 to 1.
Okay. He's plus 488 now. 48 to 1 now. Yeah.
I like Max's chance because that's also something I've seen. For example, Sam Burns. I mean, Burns, really great player, having an amazing season. If you look at it, what has he done in majors? Just like Billy Horschel, not that much. He likes those PGA setups, wet courses, balls stopping on the green on a dime. He's not the type of linksy, wild type of course that we're going to see this week. So I would sort of fade those guys. Whereas Max Homa has proven himself as a very good player on difficult tracks. And that's one of the things, that's one tip I would have for like when you don't know the course, so you don't have course history or course fit, look at the players that perform well on difficult tracks. And that's one of the things that I look at for this week, for example.
Okay. I'm going to back Cam Young over Billy Ho at -114. I'm going to take Homa over. How about Homa over Connors at +20?
Love it. Because for me, one thing that I think maybe a little bit contrarian, slopey, fast greens actually help what we call bad putters.
Okay.
And so this is a good angle to have those ball strikers. Tony Finau is a great bet that I got.
How about Finau over Burns? Finau over Burns -122. Strike your fancy?
I'd prefer -15 or -110, but
I can only give you -122.
I like Finau for sure this week. And so another, I think, nice little twist is around the green. That's ARG is one of the strokes gained around the green is one of my favorite stats. People will dismiss it as random and for many good reasons, but in some cases it can be very helpful. And for example, if you're able to, I don't want to give away too much, but if you're able in your model to take away, to classify the types of strokes around the greens, it can provide you great information. So for example, chipping out of high rough is much easier than chipping out of short grass. And for example, who is the fourth best chipper out of high grass around the green on tour or this week?
I know who's not. I know who right off the top of my head, I can tell you a couple guys I'm going to go find prices that I'm going to fade. Yeah.
Well, that guy is Victor Hovland.
Yeah.
He is
right.
He is the fourth best chipper out of high grass around the greens. Does that blow your mind?
Yeah, that's surprising.
Yeah, I suppose if it sits up a little higher and you're just never going to have a problem getting under it.
Exactly.
And that is true.
So
like
that's a great angle when people say, "Oh, Victor can't chip."
Well, how about the fact that course management misses end up in the sand so often here?
Sand is not hard anymore.
No?
People are too good out of sand.
Well, Hovland.
Hovland is not great out of the sand.
No.
I will give you that.
Yes.
But are you sure that they will end up in the sand on this course?
It feels like a lot of the misses look like sand to me. But I'm also not strongly convicted in that.
I think they have a bit of high grass around the bunkers, which prevents the ball from actually going into the bunkers if you miss. But we'll have to see how it plays out on this one.
Wow.
But I like the ARG talk because there is a lot of misuse of some of these just stats if you just use them broadly.
Yes.
Where it's like, especially, and like you said, rightfully so, a guy chips in a couple times, just a couple lucky chip-ins, and his ARG is way off the whack, where you run into some weird numbers. If you can splice that out and look at it, and the same thing went. I started looking at just courses that played tough or rounds that played tough, and then I realized, again, I've already talked about it, I'm like, man, I'm looking at stats for the year. I just said the last 6 months rounds where scoring was difficult, and then I realized, like, should I really be taking the players into account here? Like, do I really want to use that data for people? We're not going to have those kind of conditions. So I changed a lot. That, to Julian's point, a lot of what I looked at this week for like my final cuts of how I was going to use people and who was how did they play on other difficult setups and how did they play on places that had just shit ass rough where there is going to be the second cut that's going to, you're not going to just roll off the fairway into this nasty rough.
Yes.
You're going to you have to miss hard, but if you miss hard, you might be taking a drop. You might not.
Yeah, and I think the fairways will be rock hard. I've talked to guys that have actually played the course very recently, on those media days, and I know those guys, and they told me that you can hit a very good drive, and it will, depending on which slopes it falls, it will roll off. Okay. So there could be also, again, some frustrating situations from some of the players.
Interesting. Okay, well, you've given me a lot to think of. I know exactly where I'm going now in the matchups thanks to this conversation, and I will also be betting and cheering against the live golfers. I hope they all all miss the cut. That would be just a delight. Phil Mickelson, especially. I've had enough Phil Mickelson in my life the last 2 weeks.
As a proponent of chaos theory, I hope a live golfer wins this week.
Oh my God! Can you imagine just like Phil versus JT down the stretch?
Oof, wow, that would be.
If they pair JT and Mickelson, that would be great.
Oof, yeah. All right, guys. Well, we'll wrap up here. Thank you again for, of course, follow Julian at Food Snob Frog on Twitter. Is that your handle?
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
And I really appreciate all your insight. That was a great conversation. Best of luck in the U.S. Open. Andy, where can people find your golf content?
That's Bert's Golf, and I talk about it on Brown Bag every day. Like I'd like to say they had me put my golf plays behind a paywall, but I basically give them away on every piece of video I do anyway. So you don't have to look too hard to find what I'm playing.
Nice. Well,
Cool.
Best of luck regardless. And it should be a fascinating next handful of months as we follow what in the world happens to the PGA Tour and live golf and some more majors, obviously. We may have to, depending on how the next couple live events go, we may need to redo this for the Open.
Yes, I would love that. I was going to say the Open. I'm sure I will have some great takes, but thanks a lot for having me, guys.
All right. Hey, best of luck.
Bye-bye.
I'm excited for the U.S. Open now. I hadn't done any prep yet. I'm so fired up.
We forgot the wine wrecks.
Oh, well, you got me into the entire stand-alone.